Everybody.
Good morning.
Welcome to the 25th anniversary of the American Express Trade Program. I'm Steve Dolinsky from Chicago, and I see lots of familiar faces. I see some new faces. For those of you who've never been here before, I highly recommend to continue drinking water and stay hydrated. It's very dry in this elevation. You're going to be much happier as a result. We have a great program this morning. We're going to go until 10:30, and then this is our final seminar of the day. For folks who've been here in the past, we usually have one in the afternoon, but this is going to be it. A couple of housekeeping things. You can definitely stay in touch with us and track what we're doing. A couple of hashtags. One is hashtag Amex Trade. Another one is FW Classic. And then on Twitter, we're at Briefing. There's also going to be video available of all of our seminars up on the web in a couple of days or so at Restaurant Briefings, and we'll let you know about that as well. Big thanks to Vaults & Company for helping organize this event once again. They've been involved for about 17 years, to Phil Baltz and Courtney and Sarah Abel for helping me get prepared for this event. It's always a pleasure to work with them, and so I thank them for helping organize this panel as well as everyone else. And a big thanks to Amex for putting this on again. I think it's just a great program. I think this, not that yesterday's programs weren't interesting and fascinating, they were, but I see a lot of people in this room because this is really something that hits home to a lot of people, customer loyalty. How do you get those customers to come back time and time again? You can have the best equipment, you can have the best staff, but if you don't have those repeat customers, you're going to be in trouble. So I'm going to introduce our panel. On my far left, fellow Chicagoan Stephanie Izard from Girl and the Goat, as well as Little Goat Bread and Little Goat Diner. Anything else? No? Okay. To my immediate left, Sean Brock from McCrady's and Husk in Charleston, as well as Husk in Nashville, and a soon-to-open Mexican place I just heard about, also in Charleston. Graham Elliott is not here, in case you're wondering where is Mr. Elliott. He, like Dave Arnold yesterday, had some major travel problems with the weather in Chicago coming out of Chicago, so he could not make it this morning, but fortunately, we have Mitzi Gaskins. She's the Vice President and Global Brand Manager for JW Marriott, and she oversees 50 hotels in 20 countries.
64, actually.
64, excuse me. Wow, my information is not up to date. 64 hotels, okay. And giving us a perspective, not from a chef, which I think is going to be interesting. And then on my far right, Tom Colicchio, many of you know from his TV appearances, but also chef for many, many years, opened Gramercy Tavern in '94 in New York City, as well as Craft and Witchcraft, Craft Bar, Colicchio and Sons. So a great array of experience here. And I want to start with Tom, just because you have been on the line so many years also as running restaurants too, from the 90s, and you've sort of been through a recession and back. And have you seen, what is your big lesson from all this in terms of customer loyalty? You have somehow managed to get people to come back no matter what terms are like in New York City, and be loyal.
Yeah, I remember back after one of the recessions, and somebody asked, it was an interview, and someone asked, what are you doing now? Now we're focusing on the customer. Well, why weren't you focusing on the customer when you first opened your restaurant or for the years before that? We haven't changed what we do. I think creating regulars, it's like the lifeblood of the restaurant business, but to do that first, you have to create a culture of hospitality in your own house. The way we create regulars, it's not me going from table to table, it's my servers who are empowered to go out there and they know that their job is to, one, make people happy, number two, create regulars. So they're charged with that. Once you create a culture of hospitality within your own house, then it's a lot easier for that to happen.
Also begins actually before they even sit down. A quote that I read that you'd given in an interview said, you think that people come to the restaurant for food, but they'll come back for service. The number one reason someone comes back to a restaurant is recognition.
Sure.
I don't care who you are, there's always that moment when you walk into a restaurant, even if you've got the reservation, you confirm that moment of hesitation. You say, do you have my reservation? And you walk in, they say, hi, Mr. Smith, welcome back. Right. It's over, you're there for life. So really,
I said that?
You said that. So, very articulate.
That's good.
So it was good. So you train your staff not just to touch on the floor, but actually to recognize them, and that's kind of like a Four Seasons thing, isn't it?
I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the old Cheers. You want to go where people know your name.
Yeah, it gets me every time. It's like you go somewhere and they're like, gin and tonic, Mr. Brock? I'm like,
Absolutely. Make it too.
So how do you tell your staff at McCrady's to do that?
Well, what we do is we track everything, and we talk about it every day. So if a guest comes in, they give us their information, we put it into a computer system, and then when they leave the table, the server will make notes, sparkling water, any kind of notes that we can, if they are happy or unhappy, any kind of notes that'll help us. And then that goes into the system at the end of the night. And then you build this huge collection of all these little tickets up. And so when you sit down at lineup, it's like, wow, this guy's been here 72 times. And then that's the kind of thing that I've learned over the years, is really collecting all that data. So that when they sit down, it's like, gin and tonic? It's like, whoa, how did you remember that? Well, it was in the computer. But
Right, but data collection, it's a little thing to do, is to take a little extra time to put the data in, but it means so much if you can come back and use it.
It takes 5 minutes at the end of the night to type that in the computer. But then it becomes fun, you know, like fun for the servers. It's like you say, it's like Cheers. It's like you become friends with the diners. I mean, we have people who've eaten at McCrady's for 8 years straight, like Lord knows how many times. And it's like, you know what, we're friends with them.
Yeah.
We hang out with them outside of work. And I think that's the beauty of a restaurant, and that's the beauty of food, is you know, bringing people together in your community.
And Stephanie, Girl and the Goat hasn't been around that many years, but you launched with this huge success from Top Chef, and there was all this buzz in Chicago. But yet you can't just rest on that. I mean, that lasts for a little while, sure, but you've got to make sure that they're coming back. So how have you implemented that?
Yeah, I think that for me, I was lucky to have the notoriety to get people to come in the first time, but it's so important to, you can't live off of that, especially after we're on our 4th year now. So it's all about getting them back in, and I think my husband and I talk about it all the time. It's about making it personal for the guest. Even if there's people that travel from around and they go to Top Chef restaurants, or there's people that are just Chicagoans from the neighborhood. We have a wide array of people that come in, and we want to make every experience very personal, what they're looking for in their dining experience. But and we use the computer system, of course, in the beginning to try to get to remember customers. But it's interesting now with having the diner across the street where we don't use OpenTable as much. How do you remember your customers without the computer system?
By the way, the system you're talking to is OpenTable. Is that what you're referring
That's
to?
what I use.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what we use.
Okay.
We use that as well, and it's awesome in the beginning when it's only their 2nd or 3rd visit. Maybe you don't recognize them right away. But I think our servers are really great at recognizing people anyways. But at the diner, it's been a whole nother challenge. How do we remember people when they don't make reservations? So it's really about having the servers get to know their guests as much as possible, asking personal questions, and not just saying, hey, how are you today, as a part of your spiel, but really wanting to listen to their response and getting to know them during your time with them at the table. So yeah, just about making it personal.
And with 64 hotels, you've got a lot of moving parts, a lot of different employees, different locations. Do you have a system in place?
We do. And like I think what everyone said here, what we found out with our customer research is that even though product is very important in a hotel, service is really what drives people to come back, what we call intent to recommend. We can measure all these things because we're a lot bigger and larger. But we do have a system that we collect these preferences. But for us, it really does come down to the service and the culture. So I mean, we put a lot of things in place where we make sure we attract the right talent. So we know who that right JW profile of an associate is. We make sure that we train them really well and that we recognize and that we grow them and we give them the tools and the empowerment to be able to make our guests happy, because 64 hotels is not as easy as that one restaurant where they come back again and again.
And I want to flesh this out a little bit. You say you want to recruit the right people and you want to train them the right way, which all sounds great. Mm-hmm. Can you be a little more specific, give me a little bit more of an example of how do you really do that? I mean, without giving away your company's secret, but how do you find that person and how do you train them the right way?
Well, first of all, we really used, what our guests are looking for that experience, and we say, how can we identify and create a profile of what that perfect JW associate is? And so what are the characteristics? And so that's actually put into all of our interview guides on, when a supervisor is going through that interview, what they're specifically looking for. And then from day one, when that associate arrives, they go through an extensive orientation. We have another extensive training, and then we have something called Symphony of Service. And all of these things are, I mean, we even used recently, we just launched something about poise and grace. We talk a lot about for JWs how to deliver poise and grace. And so we worked with Joffrey Ballet, who's one of our brand partners, to create video vignettes that we, all of our associates use around the world, to talk about how do you connect with an audience, how do you hold yourself correctly, how do you maneuver spaces, all of those little things. So, I mean, we have to do it on a much bigger scale, but this gives the supervisors the tools so we make sure that we do kind of deliver more of a consistent level of service.
Okay. I've seen all three of you on social media pretty frequently. I'm guessing that is a way to connect to fans and followers and customers. Have you found things that work or don't work with being on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or any of those sorts of devices?
I think it's this whole other almost part of the puzzle that's come to be such a huge part of the puzzle. And I spend a lot of time I have a social media team that I work with, or a woman that I work with, and she doesn't do my tweets for me and such, but she helps me brainstorm on things that we can do and does a little research on what's worked and what hasn't worked. If you flood people with too many, I know you've all gotten like a ton of emails that come in, we're doing our special events this week, and if a restaurant sends you something every couple of days about a special event, and you start to erase it, and you're like, all right, just leave me alone, I don't want to come. But if you do it once a month or quarterly, and you kind of just really think about what you're putting into the information that you're putting out there, it seems to work a little bit better. So it's really just not flooding people with too much, and I think a combination of information about events you're having, along with combination of recipes or silly pictures, or kind of keeping people engaged by doing an array of things.
Anything to get people to come back? Anything to sort of incentivize them?
I think, on that, what I said before about being personal, if someone tweets at me that they had a great experience at the restaurant, instead of just, taking that and being like, yay, really engaging back with them and saying, let me know the next time you're coming in. If I didn't get to meet them personally, I hope I get to meet you next time. And I even give people my email address so they can get in touch with me for reservations, which maybe at one point I won't do that anymore. But
You must get a lot of, really, for reservation help?
Yeah, I tell people, I'm like, if you email me a funny joke, I will get you a reservation at Girl on the Go. And it's great because then I get these entertaining jokes. And I don't care if they're not actually funny. I'm pretty easily amused. So.
Sean or Tom, how about you guys?
I've used it where if someone's in the restaurant, every now and then I'll get a tweet at me. I have an 8 o'clock reservation. I'm sitting at your bar for 15 minutes now, and I'll immediately call the restaurant, and someone will go right to them and find them.
That's great.
And they get back to me and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe that just happened." And so you can use it. Although my Twitter feed I use for my personal Twitter feed I use for a lot of other reasons besides
Policy.
More for advocacy and stuff like that. But again, I think it's also a great tool if you have a last-minute cancellation. You tweet something out that we have seating available. People want to fill it. If they don't have reservation, please, they can't get reservations. It's a way to do that. But again, I still go back to the idea that if you want to create brand loyalty, you have to have the people who work for you that are loyal to your brand as well. If you can't create that in-house, how do you expect your guests to go out there and sort of touch everyone? In the days where you had one restaurant and you were in the house, when I had Mondrian, and I was in the restaurant from 10 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock at night, and I saw every single customer walk through the door. It's very different. But as you grow, you have to find ways to at least instill across in several states that I have restaurants, this sort of idea of hospitality and service, and obviously food as well. But that has to happen in-house. And you have to have the people that are working for you to sort of, number one, buy into what you're doing, and then you start creating a culture. And you do that by telling stories. So I'll go back to Gramercy Tavern days. I always like telling these stories because it becomes part of the fabric of your restaurants. So we had a server who was working the bar area, the tavern room. I think she still works for Danny. Does Heather Whitney still work for you guys? Yeah. And it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and she came over to the side station. I was getting a cup of coffee, and she was laughing. I said, "What's so funny?" She said, "Well, the guy just ordered Snapple."
Snapple.
All right, Snapple. Guy ordered Snapple. All right. And I said, "Well, what did you do?" She said, "Well, I told him we don't have Snapple." And I found it funny. I said, "Here." I took some money out of my pocket. I said, "Go across the street to the bodega over there and get him Snapple. Pour it in a glass, give it to him. He'll know exactly what he's getting." Now, I'm not going to stock Snapple in the restaurant, but it was a way of reaching out to this guy and letting him know that, you know what, if this is what you want, we can do it for you. And then that story gets told in family meal. And then it gets told, and it actually becomes part of this sort of living, sort of oral story about hospitality that just becomes ingrained into what we do. And then once you start telling those stories, people sort of get it. And they realize that they're going to get so much, positive reinforcement out of going and going that step a little further. When you can reach out and do something a little more than except making that sort of transaction, taking the order, sort of bringing the food, and that's it. If you can go a step further, you have someone. And then once you have them,
well, that's what I always wonder. You all have this passion for what you're doing, and like you say, you told the person what to do in this case, and now you're expanding to another city. I mean, you're in Charleston, now you're going to be in Nashville. How do you translate that vision, and how do you get everybody to kind of be on board with your passion and enthusiasm? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's your name on the menu and the masthead, but you got to get them to buy in and be a believer like you are.
You mentioned it earlier, and I love when people start talking about their businesses and their restaurants, and they use the word culture, and you create a culture, and that's exactly what you're doing. And if you start thinking about what that word means, it's a pretty strong word. It's a very powerful word, and it's your job as the chef or the GM or the owner or the leader to create a very specific culture so that your Kool-Aid tastes so good that people just keep coming back for thirds and fourths and fifths. And then you're serving it by the pitcher, and people are excited to come to work because that Kool-Aid's so delicious. They've never had Kool-Aid like that before. And then you create this culture where everybody's happy that works there, and they're excited to come to work. And all of a sudden, there's this source of pride that comes along with working at that restaurant because you're all fighting the same fight. You're doing, you're working towards the same goal, and that translates to the guest. I mean, the guest gets fired up. They're like, "Give me some of that Kool-Aid." Stuff looks good.
So how do you find time? Because I know you're all busy. I know you, a couple of years ago, you were on a panel. I know a guy like you would be just as happy spending time in a farm pulling carrots out of the ground as you would be on the line. So time-wise, you're awfully busy. How do you create that culture when you're not there?
You keep people on your team for 6, 7, 8 years, and you take care of them, and you pass that down to them. It's just like a grandpa passing down a trick to catching a smallmouth bass to his grandson. It's like you just continue to teach and teach and teach, and that's really, for me, like one of my proudest moments is to hear one of my sous chefs talking with more passion than I have to the servers. Right. It's like, whoa, man, you drink a lot of Kool-Aid.
Steve, I think what you need as a chef and as a restaurant owner, you need to check your ego at the door. If you believe you're the only person who can do it, guess what? You're the only person who will do it. So you just really need to let go of your ego and give people the room to sort of do it and grow them up, and they'll perform, they'll do it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the recognition part's really important too, because we for JW, one of the things we have is it's a web-based, we're across 64 hotels where people are allowed to share great stories of where they saw a fellow associate or someone who works for them go above and beyond, and then that gets shared with the other hotels, and then we highlight that every month. So I think it is that recognition where people have that pride. It really builds that culture.
So recognition is enough. You don't have to do money prizes or incentives or trips or things like that. It's just the recognition you find is good enough. Wow, that's great. Okay. What about, I want to talk about charitable events. You all get asked all the time to do charitable events. Part of that is to get out in the community, to actually touch the customer, to interact a little bit, even though you're passing out little samples for 1,000 at a time. But how significant is that in terms of building a relationship with the customers, being out there in the community?
I think for me, when I had Scylla, my first restaurant, I said yes to every single charity event because I saw it as a way to meet people and for people to meet me. And so it was up to 4 or 5 of them a month. And when you're doing multiple ones a week, it takes you out of the restaurant, and it's just a lot. And you're spending a lot of money on it as well. And now I say that it's better to sort of really just get behind the charities that you really believe in. And not just use it as a way to get out there, but and doing it with organizations that are just truly doing something that you're proud to be part of. So I just did one with Ming Tsai for Family Reach, which was, my whole team, we had tears in our eyes throughout the experience. It was just such an amazing evening. So it's just, I think, getting behind things that you're really proud of and then sticking with that organization and having it become part of your brand and getting your team behind it it's just, I think, another piece of the puzzle that you can really build your team with.
Well,
Yeah, we sure, you know.
you do a lot.
We do a lot, yeah. Yeah, you find organizations that you want to get behind and support.
Does it translate into loyalty, though, from the customer?
Yeah, I think so. I think that people, if they see that you're doing good or trying, that they'll definitely come and see you. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've met at events and then come to the restaurants.
But it's a good, for
Definitely
people in the
happens.
audience, it's a good suggestion to do those.
Yes, without a doubt, without a doubt. But I think you do it because it's something that moves you. I think if you're doing it for PR reasons, then it's probably the wrong reason. But you know, it's a good way to get in front of a lot of people. It's a good way, and especially, I mean, you know, Danny and I's partnership goes back to an event that I did at SOS back in '89. I think is when we first met at a Share Our Strength event. And so, besides customers, you find partners as well. And so, no, there's tons of good reasons and to get out there.
And if you're launching in a new city, it's not a bad way to introduce yourself to that town, I'm guessing?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It shows people that you care and that you want to be part of the community. I mean, for me, really, it's one of my favorite parts of the job is to be able to help people. But you know, we get asked a lot every day, and you do have to be careful about who you support and how much support you give them, because there's a lot of people that need help. So for us, we really, you know, maybe we can't do that event for 1,000 people because we're doing something else, but we can donate something. We can donate a dinner. We can just find a way to always give something rather than nothing. I think most charities are pretty legit.
Yeah. What can you do for that repeat customer? They identify themselves, obviously, at some point. You look in the database, you see this person's been here 12,000 times. What do you do for the VIP to get them just to be loyal and to spread the gospel, really, among their circle and their friends to come back and be regulars? There's got to be ways, right, to sort of keep that relationship going?
Yeah, but that's the person who, you know, knows they can call a restaurant. They're not going to go through a computer system. They're going to actually call you to get that reservation, and there always has to be an answer. I think that's it. But just getting involved in their lives. I mean, we had someone who at Craft who we saw 5 times a week. Would sit at the bar 5 times a week, and all of a sudden, we didn't see him. We knew something was wrong, and we found out he was very sick and in the hospital. And we started delivering food to him pretty much every night. And I didn't do this. It wasn't me who said we need to do this. This was my staff. One of my guys in the kitchen who would, you know, routinely come out and talk to him at night and said, we have to do something here. And so, but again, we're doing it. This is one person we're reaching, but we felt we had to do that. But again, it shows that what you're doing in-house is working because you have people who care so much. And I think that sort of translates and transfers through the entire organization. And whether it's in California or whether it's in New York. And again, it's another story that you can tell.
Yep.
So those are things. The people who've been with you for forever, I think sometimes they get overlooked. You know, it's like one of those things like, I open a new bank account, I get a toaster. Well, shit, I've been a client for 10 years, what am I getting? You have to reach out to people that have been there a long time and take care of them.
Yeah, what about you two?
I mean, sometimes it's as easy as a high five or a hug, you know? Like,
Yeah.
people love that because, like, you're hanging out together. We certainly reward people, for sure. I mean, if someone's coming in and we know that they love a dish and it's on the menu, we may even make it and just surprise them with it. And it's those little tiny things, and it might have cost me $2 to make that dish.
Right.
But this is something that comes up in the staff meeting.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of taking those notes every night, not just for VIPs, but for everybody that you engage with on a nightly basis. And you take those notes, and then when you see them pop back up, that's your opportunity to really to get them on the hook for life. You know, and it's those little things, and it's even just like I was talking about, like preferences, like, you know, you like Hendrix gin, you know, those kind of things that blows my mind when I'm at a restaurant and people do that. Speaking of blowing minds.
Stephanie, how about?
I just had a table come in the other night, and they've been in. One of my servers, Gary, who's amazing, has been there since day one. He has this table. It's probably been in maybe 20 times in the past 4 years. And I went over to the table, and they asked me about English pea pods. We saute them with a sauce and just kind of suck on it like edamame. And they're like, when are you gonna have the English pea pods? We've been coming in every couple weeks waiting for the English peas. And I had to explain to them that they're just not at the farm yet. We're having a very strange season. Things are a little bit slower this season. So it was just handing them my card and saying, please just email me. I will let you know as soon as the English peas come out of the ground and we have them at the restaurant, and we'll get that dish right on for you. But it's those just, it's one of those little teeny things that,
Yeah, so
yeah,
easy
again,
to
it's
do.
not
It
that
means
big of
so
a
much
deal,
to people.
But
it
you give
makes
your
such a
email out a
difference.
lot, it sounds like.
We
Your
also-
husband's like, what the hell?
Yeah. Who are all these people? But I think it's, it's not just about, of course, if guest comes back a few times, sending a little dessert or something like that, but I think more so actually taking the time to go and talk to them and get to know them, and not just me, but my managers going over when I'm not there, or the servers that we have that have been there for years. They really know our customers, and they, I think they sometimes, end up hanging out with them outside the restaurant,
Wow.
I think one of the things we've done is we do a lot of research on millennials, and what we find is they really are looking for that really quick reward. And if you think about what they're facing, think about Starbucks and think about Uber and all these things that give them that really quick reward. So that is, I think it's really important. And we find that if we can get somebody back a second time, they're much more profitable. They stay with us much longer. So even on that first visit, doing something for somebody that makes them want to come back, I think is really important.
I
So-
think. Can I say? I was just thinking when you said Starbucks, it's just funny. We just opened our own coffee shop, so I don't go to Starbucks on the way to work anymore. But we used to stop at the same Starbucks every morning, and just on the second visit, they already knew our names. They're like, Stephanie and Gary, what's up this morning? They do high five Fridays. Like I got so excited to go to Starbucks on Fridays for my high five. When we got when we got a dog, they knew our dog's name right away. So I ended up, one of the girls that works there, she had a baby, and I gave her. We make onesies with a goat on it that say. Gosh, what do they say? What's wrong with me? I can't remember. But we have these little onesies, so I gave her one for her baby when she had a baby. But we formed this relationship with the people at Starbucks because they were just so friendly. And we talk about how we miss going there every morning. But yeah, when you said that, I was like, they're really good at what they do there.
So you were just saying about the data that you'd look at millennials. How crucial is that right now? Because that's like the 18 to 34, and it's a big part of the
It's
base.
huge.
So what are you doing?
When you look at the potential, the revenue over the next 5 to 10 years, it's really going to be what's driving all of our revenue. So everything that we're doing right now, we're having to look at, Gen X, but really Gen Y is a big focus, and really changing a lot of our behaviors. We have a rewards program which drives a lot of our loyalty program. So it's a little bit different than maybe just an individual restaurant, and it's across all of our brands. But we're even having to really rethink how we look at our rewards program, because in the past it's you stay in a hotel, you earn points, you go and you redeem your points, so we earn and burn very much the same way, and that's not how these people want to operate anymore. They want to be able to earn points in different ways, and they want to be able to use those points for different things other than hotel stays, and they want to be able to use them quicker, and they want that recognition and that status quicker. We know a lot about Gen Ys, and they are always they're constantly kind of looking for that recognition and that quick, reinforcement.
So are you looking to forge partnerships with other retailers where they can spend their points other places?
Yes.
Okay. So you can send them my way. We'll work on it.
This is the beauty of Aspen. Deals get done before your eyes.
It's a good one. I'm sure they would love to burn their points in your restaurant.
I would love for them to do that.
Nice move, Colicchio. I want to talk to you about when things go bad, when things go awry. You learn a lot about yourselves and your businesses when things go poorly. And I remember Danny Meyer telling some great stories about how they sort of righted the ship. They had a bad customer experience, and they followed up, and they sent them something, or they were able to do something to bring them back into. And that's happened so many times. So I'd love to just hear maybe an anecdote from each of you about just a horrible experience, something that went terribly wrong, but how you were able to, or at least even how you tried. Maybe it wasn't successful, but how you tried to win that person back.
We have, it doesn't happen that often, but when somebody takes the time to actually send an email about a bad experience, I think it's very important to follow up immediately and make sure we like to just bring them back into the restaurant and win them back. We had recently one of my top servers, I guess he just was having a bad night and which is not acceptable, but one of our tables sent an email that they had such a bad experience, and they were celebrating the day after they had gotten married that day, and it was this very touching email, and I'm reading this first thing in the morning. I want, It's one of those moments you just want to cry. You can't believe you ruined someone's experience. But we reached right out to them, invited them back in. My server, Gary, that I was talking about before, who's amazing, he took care of them. And when I went out to the table, they were so happy that they had gotten to get the true experience that we're trying to give to all of our guests all the time. And now, again, they have my email address.
Of course they have your email address.
Of course they have my email address.
I don't even have your email address.
You will momentarily. But now they'll get in touch with me when they want to come back in, and so that we just, we can create an ongoing relationship with them. But it's all about, for me, we always invite people back in to have dinner on us so we can give them the experience. And I hope that people don't take advantage of that. It doesn't happen that often. Every once in a while it's like, well, are they just doing that to get a free meal out of it? I hope not. But for us, it's so important to give them the experience that we really, truly want them to have. So we're happy to do
Yeah, I mean, if it's a thoughtfully written email versus one with 17 exclamation points,
right, yeah,
right, in all caps, you want to have this sort of, if it's a thoughtful email, you're going to respond.
But if we see, let's say there was an open table, they have reviews on there. If somebody wrote an open table, something like, that chicken was terrible, I can't believe I don't know what they're going to say, but we'll look on Open Table, figure out what their reservation was, see if there's a contact email, and reach out to them and say, can you tell me a little bit more about your experience, because your Open Table response wasn't positive and it didn't give me quite enough detail. And then based on if they take the time to send us more information, then we're going to take the time to invite them back in. So.
And does the same person do that responding on your behalf, or do you do it also?
It depends on the situation. If an email comes directly to me, I definitely respond myself, but my manager at Girl in the Goat is great about really looking into, even if somebody's email wasn't in the system, we'll find a way to find this person and get in touch with them. So the staff is definitely empowered in reaching out and being able to do it on my behalf.
John?
I found that honesty and humility are the best. It's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, because you are embarrassed. It hurts your pride, and you got to let them know that. It's like, I really care that we screwed up. We made a mistake. I'm sorry, but come back and we'll show you what we do every day and what we try to do every day. And I think that means a lot to people when you don't try and make excuses. That's like one thing. Is like you have to remove that from that process. That idea of making an excuse. Just like, geez, you know what? We did screw up. I'm so sorry. And
so, do you find yourself responding personally, or do you have a GM that does all that?
It really depends on how it comes in. I mean, with social media these days, we really try and monitor that. And if someone's upset enough to tag my name on Twitter, then they're getting contacted right away. And it just really depends on how it comes in. And at the table that's where it really needs to happen. When you see it happening at the table.
So your response is generally, please come back in, dinner's on us. That's kind of the response?
Yeah, and it's just tons of apologies. I mean, that's all you can really do is just ask for forgiveness.
Right.
Yeah, you apologize first, you acknowledge that there was a mistake, and then you act upon it. But every mistake just creates an opportunity. But the follow through with that really is once you get the guests coming back in, family meal lineup, you're with your staff again. Your staff, they watch you, and if you are sort of talking hospitality and you're not really following through, especially at the high level, they know that. And so now you invite the guest in. Family meal, you sit there with your staff and say, we made a mistake with this guest 2 weeks ago. We got them back in. Got to show them what we're about. And now your staff sees that you actually really, really care. You're inviting this guest in, and they start believing you. And so again, they see that you really care. But I think that, again, it's just an opportunity. When you make a mistake, it's an opportunity to just sort of right the ship and get someone back. And usually, they become regulars once you get them back in. Once you make the mistake and you go that far, because listen, guarantee that, we all go out to dinner, you see little mistakes. Some things are big, some things are small. Guarantee they went to another restaurant, a mistake was made, they didn't get the response. So now we have them. Yeah. Now they get it. And so again, it's an opportunity to sort of make things right. And there are times you can't. There are times you just can't. You try, and you still bend over backwards to do it. And some people just say, "I will never come back in there, no matter what. I don't want your free meal." And a lot of times, I'll just refund the money.
And at a corporate level, can you empower people to have that kind of personalized? Not giving out your emails, obviously, but what can you do?
Yeah, well, we actually have a system in place called Guest Voice where it monitors all the social media out there and gives that information to our managers and general managers and allows them to act on that. And we really we require that they actually have to respond within a certain amount of time. And the one tidbit of information I think I would give out is that we really coach our managers on is not responding on social media, is really kind of taking it out and responding to the side, because it can kind of get a little crazy if you're trying to respond back and forth, within the social media channels. But no, we do a lot of that monitoring, and then we empower our associates to be able to make it right, even not just managers, but at the line level too.
Okay. What about the time commitment you have for training? I know you all talk about how important it is to train the staff and drink the Kool-Aid, be on the same page. How much time do you think you spend, I guess, at the beginning when you hire somebody, over the course of a week, before you put them on the floor, before you feel confident that they're going to be out there representing you?
We take when we first opened Girl on the Goat and Little Goat, it would be probably about 6 weeks of training with our new staff, just because you're creating the new systems, you're creating a new restaurant. But now when we bring on new staff, we just had about 3 people hired at Little Goat, and they had their first day with me going over the menu, but they have about 3 weeks till they're going to actually be on the floor. So we take it very seriously, and really, people that want to work with us, we want people to be really committed to what we're trying to do with hospitality and our brand, and be very excited about it. So giving us that amount of time, it's a lot of commitment to be able to get on the floor after 3 weeks. So we know that they're truly committed to wanting to work there at that point. But taking it from following other servers to not only at Little Goat, they don't only follow servers, they'll go work in the coffee station, they have a day in the kitchen, they'll go work behind the cashier station, just really getting to know everything that's going on in the restaurant. So we take training very seriously.
Do you find a small percentage of that group says after 2 weeks, they've got a week to go, they don't make it?
They don't. At Girl on the Goat, we've been lucky. We only are usually hiring one person at a time, so it's a little bit different. But at Little Goat, we've had these training sessions where we have 5 or 6 people, and only maybe 3 of them will make it all the way through because they decide it's just not for them, or that they don't want to put in the time. And that's fine. We kind of expect that might happen, and those 3 people that make it are going to be in for the long haul, and they really truly want to work there. So I think it's a nice way to kind of weed out the people that aren't really passionate about it.
What do you think?
And we give out a lot of literature, and there's a lot of studying, and it's like going to school. And there's certainly a lot of observation during the training of all aspects of the restaurant, so you can really see that culture, and you can really see what drives that restaurant. And the more I think about it, I think it's kind of a case-by-case sort of thing. It's like some people really pick it up, and you got to get them on the floor, and some people need a little bit longer. But I think our role is to just constantly put information in front of them and constantly work on creating that culture and getting that vibe right.
So in this literature, I'm just curious, is it your bio? Is it recipes? Is it the history of Charleston? Or
yeah, well, it's like the history of bourbon, or the history of Hoppin' John, or stuff that you would find in a cookbook or a book on whiskey. It's like just anything that helps them, because I'm passionate about a lot of things, and I study them, but you can't expect that server to know what you know. So we find it's very, very important, and it's fun for people to put all that, like the historical facts and all the information and all the technical things in front of them, so they can learn it. Because when they can speak with confidence, like that changes the way they handle themselves on the floor, and that changes the way the guest experiences the restaurant. Big section on fermentation in there, I'm guessing?
Yeah. How about you two?
Well, we do pretty extensive training. I think it varies so much, right, by the different job types. So the technical training can really vary, but we do really extensive, what I would say, culture or service training. So again, telling the history of the brand, who our target customer is, really kind of getting them ingrained, making them drink the Kool-Aid.
But a couple of weeks before they get out on the floor, or several hours per week?
The first day of work, they're required to do a full day orientation. Within a certain amount of time, they do another full day, which we call service excellence, and then within a certain number of days, they have to do another 9-hour training course. And then we have daily. I think that's the sustainment, I think, is the most important thing. So we do daily rehearsal where, across all of our hotels worldwide, every shift they start off, and there's a culture piece of it. Some of it's just, who's coming in that day, what groups they have in, things like that they need to know. But some of it is that reinforcing that culture, whether it's sharing some of those stories or talking about some of our, what we call our service values, or our core values of the brand.
And for you, I mean, you got from Colicchio and Sons to Witchcraft. Same amount of time?
Yeah, it's well, I mean, the training period for new hires about 6-7 shifts, but it's really ongoing training. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop after the 6 days and then we turn them loose. Every night is training. Every night we're opening wine, tasting wine. Every night we're talking about service points. We usually do larger breakout sessions if we're tackling a larger subject. If we're bringing people up from back waiters to waiters, they may have a breakout session. We also provide English classes for people that are sort of maybe a back waiter moving up to try to get them more familiar with the language to help them out. We want to move people up constantly. And so, but it doesn't stop. It's just ongoing. And same thing, Sean. We have literature out there for people to read. If we're doing a new dish, maybe if there's I don't know. The particular fish that we're using, we'll give information about that fish. We'll also talk a lot about sort of the ethos that guide us, whether or not we're using antibiotic-free meats. I was on a morning talk show and made mention of antibiotics, and I immediately got phone calls from people saying, if you're going to support us, we'd like to sort of enlist you to help support our cause. And I had to go back to the restaurant and make sure that we were completely antibiotic-free. And we're, with the exception of one restaurant, 100%. But this is something that we had to talk about our staff to and have a larger session, bring them all in and say, this is something that we're doing, it's really important. And, but providing that ongoing training, I think, is something that, will never end. It's part of what we do constantly.
When we talk about loyalty, I'm curious about this question of, we've got some high end and some low end. So you've got a diner and you've got Girl and the Goat, you've got the Colicchio and Sons, you've got Witchcraft. Rick Bayless has got Topolobampo and Shoko. Can you cross-pollinate? Can you, I mean, I think they're different audiences. You've got a Gen Y, a millennial audience going to the Shokos or going to the diners or going to the Witchcrafts, and you've got a different audience going to the fine dining. Can you create loyalty? Can you get one to go to the other? How does that work?
Yeah, well, we found that when the economy turned, that people would, that we'd see on a regular basis, that craft started going to craft bar. And the regulars at craft bar started going more to Witchcraft. And so they were eating their way down the food chain, and then they came back up. So yeah, and we have a loyalty program at Witchcraft. It's not so much a tracking program. We give cards out and we punch the card. Yeah, it's great. And people feel great about it. They get punched and they're excited about it. And, but no, you can create that brand awareness and brand loyalty across all price points.
Do your customers at the sandwich place know about the other restaurants?
Typically they do, although we found out through doing some research that the Witchcraft didn't have as much brand identity as the other restaurants. And so we had to do some work to sort of make sure people understood that Witchcraft was also part of the craft sort of group.
Because the craft is too confusing. It's just craft and craft.
I don't know.
Yours is across the street, so it's a little different for you, right?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I think that for us, what we found is making sure that our staffs at both restaurants know what's happening at the other restaurant and support it in a way where if you're talking to a guest that's at Girl and the Goat for the first time, they're in town for the weekend, talking to them about, hey, well, we have Little Goat across the street. You should check it out for breakfast. We can get you a table set up over there. Or, hey, we have a rooftop event on Saturday night. You should totally go check that out. So making sure that they know what's happening at the other restaurant so that they can talk about it with the guests.
Sean?
I think it's kind of the importance of earning trust and teaching your staff how important that is to really work towards that with every single opportunity they have to earn trust from someone. Because if you eat at Husk a lot and you really like the cornbread and you trust that, and if I open a Mexican restaurant, you trust that I can make an El Pastor taco, and that's again, it goes back to that personal relationship, that personal interaction and connection, and really understanding the value of trust. It goes such a long way.
I'm curious, what are the challenges for you? We've got two big media markets here with a lot of TV exposure on both these folks' plate. You've got a little bit smaller market, Charleston and Nashville, not quite as much national press. You don't do a ton of national television, even though I've seen you on TV a couple times. But are there challenges for you in terms of getting customers to come in, to be loyal? I mean, are you just focused on that core local audience?
No, honestly, we're about 50-50 every day with locals and people coming to visit. And regardless if you live there or you flew in from Sweden, really make it a point to show how thankful and grateful we are that they chose us, and that, especially when someone travels travels just to eat at the restaurants. It's like, you got to make that very, very apparent that you are so thankful and so grateful. And I think that's something that you got to work at with every table and every single day. And, you know, when that person's sitting in that chair, that's when you have them. You know, when you're face to face with them and they're eating the food and listening to the stories. And at the end of it, you know, if they walk away feeling like, wow, they really care, they're going to be back. And that's how you create regulars, I think.
Yeah. What about in terms of media exposure? You've got so many different markets that you have to deal with, and I'm guessing you have PR folks in those markets or in those regions. But how do you get involved in reaching out to people, reaching out to press, to spread your message to potentially new customers?
We have this great PR firm called Boston Company. No, we really do that.
That was not a setup, by the way, Phil. I did not set that up. I did not intend that at all.
No, we use PR a lot. I mean, we have pretty small marketing funds when you think about it, and driving awareness is really one of our key strategic imperatives. So PR is really, really important. So we do things on a global level. So we'll open up a hotel in Dubai and have a huge event where we really garner national level and global level PR. And then we have inside the individual hotels, we help them a lot. They really work in their local communities, because that's the way we get the word out about JW, is really through PR more than going out and doing a TV advertising campaign or something like that, just because we don't have the funds. It's a great way to make your marketing dollars stretch a lot further.
But that's for everything, not just restaurants and bars. So they're promoting everything. But are there ways because you got to compete against the independents in your markets too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think it is treating our restaurants as much as we can like independents and not as hotel restaurants. Mm-hmm. I think that's really important. So that the efforts against the PR for a restaurant, that is very independent from what it would be for the hotel.
I mean, you have to be more proactive. You can't just, because I want to show on Bravo, that's going to drive customers. You got to do a lot more than that.
No. In fact, sometimes the TV exposure could be a negative. There's a lot of people out there that believe I'm not in my restaurants anymore. All I do is TV. And as much as I tell people it takes about a month to shoot a show, there are people who walk in on Wednesday night and they see me there and say, "What are you doing? Aren't you on TV tonight?" So no, it sometimes works against you.
It's the Bobby Flay conundrum, and yet he's in his restaurant now all the time.
Yeah, but I think that where independent restaurants and I got involved in a small hotel property. We have 22 keys out in Bridgehampton, so we had to actually learn more about this. We don't do enough on the sales side of things in restaurants. We just assume that we open the doors, we do some PR, and customers come to us. But we're not very good at outreach, at sales and marketing. We're very good at PR. We're very good at getting people, our faces out there and our stories out there. I think that just comes more natural to us. But restaurants don't actually have a sales. You think about this. And again, I learned how important this was when we did the small hotel. You need a sales force. I mean, how much do you rely on your sales force to get out there and make sure that people are coming back to your places? And so we just recently, especially if we have private dining rooms, we just recently merged the Witchcraft management team and the Craft management team. And one of the things we do is we have a sales department now, and it's working. It really is, because even though you have a lot of if you have a few restaurants and you have maybe 3 private dining rooms, and you think that phone call comes in to Craft and they say, no, we're booked on that date, that person often doesn't take the next step and say, well, try Colicchio and Sons. They often don't do that, but now it goes to the sales department and they're selling across all the restaurants. And so that kind of outreach, I think, is the next phase when you start doing multiple properties.
What about you two?
It's interesting when you say that. We just started doing catering out of Little Goat, and it's not the same as just because I was on Top Chef, people aren't going to get my catering for their business luncheon. So we actually had to kind of go a little bit more old school, and we brought on someone who will take little sample boxes out to businesses and just hit the street and go out and find customers for us that are going to get our catering, and it's working. But it took, I can't just tweet like, hey, do you want to have some sandwiches for your business lunch? It's not going to work. So just thinking of other ways that we can use old school marketing, not social media necessarily, to get customers to use our catering.
That's interesting here. How many followers do you have, roughly, on Twitter?
50,000.
50,000. And yet if you tweet a couple times about the catering, it's not going to make any difference.
Because, I mean, it's the same 50,000 people hearing every tweet I say, so it's not necessarily someone in there. I don't know all these people that are in their business offices. I don't know what people do all day, but.
Yeah, also, I mean, I have close to 600,000 followers, but they're not all in my backyard. They're all over the
they're
world.
all around.
Yeah.
So being able to
a
reach
fair
them-
number are local.
Yeah, but being able to reach just the actual people, you have to take a different approach. So I was like, just go stand on the streets in downtown Chicago with some cookies that have information about the catering and hand them out. And we did. And then people call us. They're like, that was a delicious cookie. I would like to get your catering.
And here's my email.
And here's that
Your
brief email.
In fact, you put your email on the cookies.
Yes.
Good idea. But it's fun. It's almost this new challenge with that and with the private dining rooms. When you mentioned that, we have one woman that does the private dining rooms at both restaurants, and we were talking about they go to bridal conventions and find brides that want to come and have events at our spaces. So going to different outlets and really thinking about who your customer base is for that particular part of your brand, and how you can reach them in a different way, because it's not the same as just opening the doors at Girl and the Goat. You know, it's just a whole different world.
Right. Same thing, you know, we opened in LA. We made sure the manager, with a package of stuff, went to hit every concierge in every hotel. And, you know, it
a lot of
works.
legwork.
It's a lot of legwork, and it works. We do it in New York, too.
You got to bring.
You can't
the
take it for granted that people
concierges,
just going to come. There's too much competition. There's too many people out
Going
there.
around to the concierges around Christmas time and bringing cookies. It's all about cookies.
Yeah, it's all about cookies.
Cookies and Kool-Aid to everyone, and saying thank you with a card, and just, you know, again, bringing it back to making it personal. And they're going to recommend your restaurants and your private dining spaces if you.
And you're bringing Hoppin' John around the neighborhood, right?
I'm actually going to steal Tom's idea.
What's that?
Which one?
Just the sales thing within the restaurants. It's not, you know, we have this mindset and we're trained a certain way, and we do our jobs every day, and we have sales and marketing for private dining, but we don't have it for the restaurants. And you know, I think we're leaving a lot on the table, and we can only reach so many people with the forms of social media and the other various avenues to reach people. So I think that's a brilliant idea. That's the beauty of these panels.
That's great, yeah. Have you also tried, though, with respect to like PR or reaching out to the media in your markets in Nashville and Charleston to get people interested, excited to come in?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've learned over the years is the importance of realizing how large the platform of just media is, period. So if you're being interviewed by a journalist for X magazine, you know, you've got to see that as an opportunity to no matter what the interview's about, to put your message out there, because you're reaching so many people. I mean, between TV and just media in general, and you can reach so many people, and if you don't take advantage of that platform and you just talk about yourself the whole time, you know, you're missing a huge opportunity to really take that sales tactic. I think that's something I've learned over the last few years, for sure.
All right. I'm going to end a little bit early because I have a feeling there might be a lot of questions in this room. I'd love to have some people also. I know the other restaurateurs are here, and I just hear comments would be great. But any questions, just raise your hand. Sarah's got a microphone, and just tell us who you are, where you're from.
Hi, I'm Tamara. I'm from Los Angeles. So we're talking a lot about customer retention, and our restaurant is kind of a neighborhood/corporate environment where it's a restaurant in a community in which we grew up in. So there's all these like interconnected networks. I mean, you piss off somebody, it's going to ripple effect. But we have a great following. People eat there 3 times a day, 5 days a week. Here's the question. How do you stop someone from coming to your restaurant?
You could toss them, like I got tossed at Graham Elliott a couple years ago. Red medicine.
I mean, seriously, some people are just not worth the hassle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go on record there. I'll avoid that. There's only one instance I remember we actually had to throw someone out and keep them out, and it was because they verbally assaulted one of our servers, and it got really nasty, and we just asked them not to come back.
Okay, nothing that extreme,
Yeah.
but just discourage them from coming.
Why would you?
I've never
I don't
heard that
understand why
question
you'd want to
before.
do that.
Because they come and they're a hassle. They either always want something to complain about, they don't tip, for example, or they will expect extra service, or they just want something special done every single time.
Does this happen multiple times, multiple customers,
one
several
customer.
problem
No,
customers?
it doesn't. But there are
someone brings some outside stuff, that's not acceptable. But I think that every restaurant, I'm sure, has some guests that come back all the time, and it's kind of, you know, you're like, oh, they're coming in tonight, and it's kind of like a little chuckle goes on. And I think for me, it's just something you just kind of, you still want to give them your best. I don't know. I don't really want to like tell them to go away. You just have to deal with it.
I'm not a restaurateur. I would say
I don't
grin and bear it, but you're taking their money, I guess, but I don't know. That just seems difficult. Next year we'll have a panel on how to kick customers out. All right.
Just put their picture up.
Next
Not
question.
welcome.
Someone in the back? Seriously, no more questions? Oh, right up in front. Yeah, I'm sorry. We've just answered every question possible under the sun. I love that. We've covered everything.
No, I think that you've done a great job, and but one thing that Tom, you alluded to was the creating of a culture, and it starts from within. We own a restaurant, and I think we did a very good job of that, creating a culture within our restaurant and retaining staff. But a lot of restaurateurs we talked about, the biggest problem they had was retaining their staff. They had so much staff turnover, and the recognition that you talk about, and the taking one step extra for the customer is difficult when that server is the first time they're seeing that staff member. You know, if this client says, "How did you know I wanted gin tonic because you've never seen me before?" It's a little bit harder to go that extra mile. So staff retention would be something that.
Yeah, but again, I think a lot of that can be taken. I mean, number one, I think staff retention is key. You show me a restaurateur that has staff retention, they're a successful restaurant, and they probably have brand loyalty because they have brand loyalty within their four walls. But if it's someone new, again, staff meal, we have regular coming in. They're going to be in your station. You're new. Someone is going to actually be at that table who knows them, and maybe make the introduction. And so again, you can, because I agree with you. It feels somewhat disingenuous when someone sits down and you don't, you know, maybe someone doesn't know them and you all automatically have all this information out. People kind of get a little creeped out about it. I think they are getting used to it though. But I think you can fix that through staff meal. You know, the lineup is so important to get that information out there. Who's coming in, what their preferences are, and then if you care about having that new employee being introduced to this person who's a regular, have someone do that. Have a manager do that, make that introduction. So I think you can accomplish that. Yeah.
And how do you, within your restaurants, create the staff loyalty that I mean, I know how we did it, but I think that's such an integral
You care
part.
about them. You take care of them. You know, back when Enlightened Hospitality, you know, Danny's sort of mantra. I mean, I was back there when we were creating that, and we do the same thing. Take care of your staff first. If they believe in you, they'll go out and do your bidding for you. It's that easy. They're number one. You take care of your staff, they'll take care of the customers.
I mean, on that note, I have one anecdote I was going to share if it came up, but I went to Gramercy this past winter. I was waiting for a friend sitting at the table, and I had a question about chinar, which I was interested in, and a question about some cider on the menu. And he said, you know what? As long as you're waiting, why don't I bring out a little chinar neat for you to try, and we'll do a little cider tasting for you. Have you, no obligation, but we'll just have you try 3 or 4 different ciders. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, to empower the staff to do that. And it was like my old friend, and I never met the guy before, and we were like buddies.
Right. We empower the staff. You know, at the end of the meal, someone's trying to make a decision between one dessert or another. The wait staff knows to bring 2 of them out. Bring both out. Just bring it out. Just make that happen. You know, so again, but you have to empower the staff. You can't sort of tell the staff to do X, Y, and Z, and all of a sudden they have to have the hassle now to bring in an extra dessert. They have to go through 3 levels of management to actually bring in and give something away. You have to trust them that they're not going to give away the house, but also trust them to know when to make that decision. And I think that's important. And once you empower them to do that, they feel you're on your side. Because how does that translate to them? They're going to get a bigger tip. And so it's just a way of really sort of letting your staff sort of understand that you're on their side, and they'll be on your side.
Yeah, right in the middle. 1 second, let me get a microphone, sorry. All the way from LA.
Good morning. Just tagging along this gentleman's point and Tom, to your point, I think, working for a big brand, if it is, in my opinion, it does not matter if you're if you're a waiter serving a loyal guest. What it tells the customer is that, there's communication across the brand, that, me as a guest, I'm valued by this brand. I mean, we spoke about brand loyalty, we spoke about the thoughtfulness and, the culture. That to me spells the culture of what you represent and who you represent. Like if Steve Dolinsky is going to come to my hotel for the first time, and we know who you are, and you go to another property, say in Laguna or New York, wherever it is, and they still have the chinar for you, you're going to get the trust what Sean was talking about as well. So I think to this gentleman's point, it's all about the lineup, the brand loyalty, the trust, and the thoughtfulness that companies work for to create that loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
So it does not necessarily mean you have to invest in the economics of it initially, but as you continue to be thoughtful and as you continue to represent your brand well with the trainings and things like that, that automatically translates to better economics for your business. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anybody else? Up in the front?
I was excited to hear about sales in a positive way. What tips do you give your staff? Because sales and marketing are different things. So maybe you can share, because Sean said he was going to take a couple ideas around sales and implement them. What tips would you give? It sounded like one was a follow-up question by the sales staff to ask one more question. What other things do you do on the sales side?
Well, we're proactive. We're going out there and actively getting in front of, with marketing materials, getting in front of people who are making decisions for companies as to where they're spending their dollars. So it's really just about being proactive instead of waiting for stuff to come. We're actually out, like Stephanie said, we're out on the street. We're out knocking on doors, making appointments, and it's old school. I think too often we're spending too much time on social media thinking that's our answer, and really a lot of times it's not. So it's just old school, getting out there, getting in front of people.
I think also just the follow through after if you got a new customer, we gave out cookies, somebody calls us, we do catering, to follow up with it afterwards because we want them to tell their friends how amazing it was. We send a card afterwards, maybe some more cookies, and we say thank you so much for having your first catering with us, hope you'll do it again. So it's, the sales team not only brings them in the first time, it also follows up with them afterwards. I think it's really important to see it from both sides.
Yeah. I mean, for instance, we'll do, if someone hasn't been in the restaurant, that salesperson is going to call up and they're going to also say, by the way, we'll cater in your home as well, or we'll cater events at a house. And so they're trying to get that extra sale. So.
Okay. Anybody else? Back here on the left? Go, Sarah, go. And just tell us where you're from also.
Baltimore, Maryland. Tom mentioned it about, I think you said something about a punch card. So my question is, in terms of customer loyalty, what are your thoughts about doing like paper cards, punch cards, those sorts of things? Would you only use that in a cafe or coffee shop?
Well, I use that in Witchcraft, my sandwich shops. But we're looking. I was working on a separate project aside from the restaurant, and we were working with a marketing and branding company, and they talked so much about millennials and this idea of rewards. And it got me thinking about how do you create a rewards program for the restaurant that is a clear strategy. And so we're working on it. We haven't pulled the trigger on it yet. I don't know if other restaurant groups are doing reward programs, like really codified reward programs. I haven't heard of one, but it works. It really does. But it doesn't have to be necessarily, like you said, it doesn't have to necessarily be a free meal. It could be an invite into doing something special. Maybe we have a farm in one of our restaurants in the city. Maybe it could be a guided tour through the farm or something like that. Or, an add-on that is not part of the actual everyday experience, and so they feel like it's a special thing. So I don't know. We're working on it. Yeah.
But you do punch cards at Witchcraft?
At Witchcraft we do, yeah.
So it's like they come in 8 times, the 9th time it's free or something?
Once, I think 12, you punch 12 sandwiches, you get the 13th free, something like that. It's a card. But we found that people started counterfeiting them. So we had to work on that.
There was a holograph in each one.
We were looking into doing punch cards that will encourage people to try different parts of the restaurant.
Yeah.
So at Little Goat there's the private dining and there's the catering and all the different things. So if you get a punch card that you did the catering, you had the waffles, you went to the rooftop and you did this and that, you get a t-shirt. So it's just kind of a nice way to also get people to try the other parts of your business. It's still something, again, that we're trying to figure out the best approach, but I think it's fun. It's a nice way to, it's like a fun little game to have the loyalty.
Anybody else? Okay. Oh, yep. One more in front.
Thank you. I'm from San Jose, California. This is going back to handling bad reviews. You all said that you would invite them back and offer them a free meal. Sometimes people leave reviews that clearly they have other issues.
Are you referring to like a Yelp review or a personal email?
Yelp review, so something that other customers can see.
A Yelp review, I don't
You don't respond.
focus on Yelp reviews, no.
If it's something, for me, if it's a Yelp review where they say it's very specific and it sounds very true that we did something wrong, like, hey, my server last night, that it sounds very specific, we'll follow up on it. But yesterday, for Eater, they had me read like this negative Yelp review out loud. And the person clearly they were talking about a dish that we've never even served before. So they were just making it up. So in that case, I wouldn't invite them back in because they were full of crap.
But would you respond to the Yelp review?
Not if it seems like it's not genuine.
Yeah.
But if it is genuine, we'll find a way to get in touch with them.
Yeah, we're looking at patterns. And so if I'm looking at Yelp and all of a sudden 5 people in the course of 2 days say the food's salty, someone in that kitchen has a heavy hand. And then I can look and see whether it's fish or meat because they're separated on the line. So we'll track it, but I don't respond to every Yelp or Open Table. Some of them we do. It all depends. I mean, sometimes you can kind of get a pretty good idea of how sincere someone is, but.
It is really good to track, though. We do have. I don't like reading. It makes me sad when I read negative things. I don't like to read the Yelp reviews, but people on my team read them. And if they see something that's recurring, if somebody's just like, your food sucks, I'm probably not going to take it to heart from one person. But if 10 people are talking about the salty scallops, we're definitely going to find out what's up with the salty scallops. So it's a great way to track and see.
Yeah. One thing that drives me crazy is when I get someone on Twitter will say, I had dinner last night and service was terrible. It's like, okay, you're telling me, I'm sorry, but did you tell a manager in the restaurant? Because if you said something in the restaurant, we could do something about it. Now, there's not a whole lot I can do. But you apologize first and go through. But I guess you have to look at on balance, how well you're doing. It's a scorecard like everything else. You look at it, you see what you're doing, and deep down inside, listen, for all of us that are running restaurants, we know when we mess up. We know, and when someone makes a comment, we'll go back and we'll look and 9 out of 10 times someone screwed up somewhere. And so you just kind of, again, you look at the aggregate sort of these reviews and the online reviews, and you can get a lot of information and good information. But it's the same thing in a review. I mean, you get a so-so review and it hurts for a while, but you dig through it and there's some gold there, and you can always get better.
Okay, one more question? No. Okay, so again, hashtag Amex Trade, FW Classic. Love to hear your feedback at Briefing on Twitter. I want to thank everybody at Balls. I want to thank Amex. I want to thank my panel and thank Mitzi for filling in last minute. Yes. Have a fantastic rest of Aspen and hope to see you next year. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.